make shelf at home with the goodies in the back, and the waters and the ice chest just below the sink.
Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome. My name is Patrick Von Dolan with the San Antonio Family Association. We started in 2011 in San Antonio in response to the abuse of taxpayer dollars in San Antonio to put on a play called Corpus Christi Play that portrayed Jesus Christ and his disciples as promiscuous homosexuals and with lewd sex acts, having men playing Jesus' wives, hanging on a cross in a public theater called San Pedro Playhouse. We followed that, the arts budget in the city of San Antonio, all the way to a budget vote for the 2012 budget in September 15, 2011, where they did three things. They increased the funding of Twisted Arts. They implemented unplanned pregnancy services funding and created a plan for domestic partner benefits for city employees, where they first official attack by the city of San Antonio against marriage. And so as a result, the genesis of that, actually today is our birthday. And 12 years ago today is our birthday for the San Antonio Family Association in protecting and defending promote the family in the public square. And so we do it all over Texas, and I'm from Goliad. My name is Patrick Von Dolan, and I appreciate you all being here, and thank you for being here. So I'd like to do what we do in every event that we have, is start in prayer. If you'll join me, and as we ask for the one triune God to bless us and guide us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We sit before you, Holy Spirit, conscious of our sinfulness, but aware that we gather in your name. Come to us, remain with us, and enlighten our hearts. Give us light and strength to know your will, to make it our own, and to live it in our lives. Guide us by your wisdom. Support us by your power. For you are God, sharing the glory of Father and Son. You desire justice for all. Enable us to uphold the rights of others. Do not allow us to be misled by ignorance or corrupted by fear or favor. Unite us to yourself in the bond of love, and keep us faithful to all that is truth. As we gather in your name, may we temper justice with love, so that all our decisions may be pleasing to you, and earn the reward promised to good and faithful servants. We ask this of you, who live and reign with the Father and the Son, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
And because we are patriots and true-blooded Americans, I know we don't have a flag in here, but if you would stand with me, and we will recite the pledge both of the United States and Texas. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our Texas pledge, I'm sure your kids can lead us in it. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you very much. Well, as I said, my name is Patrick Von Dolan of the San Antonio Family Association, and I want to thank each of you for being here. I want to thank particularly Drew, coaching them for being a conduit to. I have lived here in Goliad since we moved my sophomore year in high school to Austin, and after going to high school in Austin, then to Texas A&M, and being in the Corps Cadets, my wife and I got married, and she's from San Antonio, or wanted to live in San Antonio, although she's born in Corpus Christi. Wanted to live there, and so we've lived there ever since. So we get to Goliad as much as we can. Love Goliad, and want to do everything we can to help preserve the greatness of Goliad and what it stands for. I have to remind people, as sad as it is, even in San Antonio, even native Texans, we have to remind them all the time of the second part of the Battle Cry of Texas. We all know that here. But remember the Alamo, remember Goliad. And if it wasn't for Goliad, San Jacinto might not have happened, the victory. And I would argue that being somewhat of a history buff and a lover of history, that the energy and the vim and the vigor that the Texians had in the Battle of San Jacinto was in large part because of the massacre here in Goliad. And I know you probably would agree with me there. And so the victory might not have been as convincing, or as might have taken a little bit longer than it did in the I believe 19 minutes that it was. But Goliad played a significant role in that, and the men that died here for the cause of freedom. We enjoy those liberties today despite the heat and enjoying the summertime. So thank you very much for coming out, because this is all about freedom. And with freedom comes responsibility, right? And that personal responsibility. So we want to help people in developing that personal responsibility. At the same time, we want to protect their freedom. That isn't the freedom to do wrong to themselves or someone else. That's the freedom to do what's right and good for themselves and for their community. And I know that I want to applaud you in here that made sure that the county passed its county declaration, emergency declaration of the border crisis. And I think this is related right to that. And I think there's a great connection between human trafficking from an open border as well as abortion trafficking. So the protection and defense of life is paramount. Without life, we have nothing else. And nothing else matters if we don't have life. And so it became aware to us, and after, interestingly enough, Mark Dixon, who I'm about to introduce here in a minute, he and the San Antonio Family Association share an attorney in the name of Jonathan Mitchell, former Solicitor General of the state of Texas, and represents us legally. And you might have heard, how many of y'all heard about the city of San Antonio banning Chick-fil-A from the San Antonio airport? Did you hear about that? So Dennis did, and Dennis is a great friend from San Antonio, and we are the plaintiffs in that lawsuit where we filed a lawsuit against the city of San Antonio and the discrimination and viewpoint discrimination of the city of San Antonio upon Chick-fil-A and Salvation Army and Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so we took that all the way to the Texas Supreme Court and won that decision 7-2. There's more to do there. In 2015, the city of San Antonio saw fit to create break 5 zoning laws in the city of San Antonio, allowing Planned Parenthood South Texas to build a new abortion facility, 21,300 square feet, and retrofit it, and where they would kill 2,000 babies a year in San Antonio and destroy that many women as well. And so we filed a lawsuit against them and they're for the illegal zoning. And so we're all about the defense of women and protection of unborn life and born life. With that, it became very evident to us that we tend to fight in a very reactive situation, because the city of San Antonio has become so progressive in wanting to set trends across the nation, be known for that, that we found ourselves being completely defensive and in reactionary mode. One of the beautiful things that what Mark is doing is something proactive, something to be proud to be part of. And in doing that, we get to go and set foot forward and put forth a regulation, whether it be on a city level or a county level, to where we stop abortion trafficking. Women are protected, babies are protected. And so we want to do that. We want to be proactive. We don't want to just be reactive. There's so much going on in the world, and so that's why it's so great that each of you took time to be here today, and I want to thank you again for that. So this is something, this is what's great about this, a way to be proactive, to take a step forward and say, we're gonna do something that's good for the community, that's good for people that are passing by, and it doesn't have to be defensive or reactionary. And so with that, we had a meeting last month in Bulverde, Texas, Spring Branch area, north of San Antonio, if you're familiar with that area. And where Mark came down and joined us and spoke there, and we got a chance to visit. I said, well, I'm from Goliad, and wouldn't it be great if we went to one of the most historic towns in the state, great state of Texas, and we were proactive there and brought an end to abortion trafficking, much like the declaration that the county has made in saying that there's an emergency here with the border crisis, with an open border. And just in case, if you didn't know, one of the things, striving to be a devout Catholic Christian, I think it's important that we come to the realization one of the most important documents that involves immigration in the state of Texas and throughout the world, but particularly here with an open border, is a document written in 1891 by a pope named Pope Leo XIII. Pope Leo XIII wrote a document on labor and migration. And in that document, it specifically states that people have a right to migrate. And countries have a right, duty, and obligation to protect its borders and regulate who comes in and out of out of the country for the benefit of the people who are living there, the citizens. And so how important that is to realize that and to follow those instructions. So what we want to do is we want to protect babies' right to migrate. And not, in this case, it's not a wall, a border wall coming over or a wall or a lack of one coming over the Rio Grande, but it's for a straightforward term across the vaginal wall. And we want them to be able to migrate there and out to breathe the free air. That's what this is. Everybody has a right to breathe free air. And we want everybody to have that chance to have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mark Dixon. He started, Mark, you gonna come up next, or is AJ going first?
Let's have AJ first.
So let you said you know AJ. I'm gonna introduce you, and you can introduce AJ. Because, and then I won't have to introduce you again.
Sounds good.
And AJ can just hand it off to you. So Mark Dixon started Sanctuary Cities for the Unborn in reaction to what Planned Parenthood was doing in his small town in East Texas, and trying to create a sanctuary for people to run from Louisiana to have surgical abortions in the state of Texas and run back over and back to Louisiana. And through the grace of God, the work of the Holy Spirit, he found a way to overcome that and help protect women and children in East Texas, which helps us today. And that's why we're here today. So please welcome me, Mark Dixon.
Okay. I'll go ahead and say a little bit about myself, and then I'll introduce AJ, and then after he shares, I'll jump right into the ordinance. My name's Mark Lee Dixon, so I'm a director with Right to Life of East Texas, and founded what's called the Sanctuary Cities for the Unborn initiative. And so there was an abortion facility. It actually wasn't a Planned Parenthood, but an independent abortion provider named Hope Medical Group for Women that was looking at crossing the border to a little place called Wascom, Texas. Now, Wascom, I'm from White Oak, Texas, which is a good little ways, not too far from Wascom, but good little ways from here. And in White Oak, Texas, it's right there by Longview, Texas, in between Gladewater and Longview there. And the closest abortion facility to me was the one in Shreveport, Louisiana. And there was about 100 abortions every week there at that facility. 20 every Tuesday, 30 every Thursday, and 50 every Saturday. And upon hearing that this abortion facility could be shutting down, and the fact that they had at one time their blueprints to move to Wascom. In fact, there was someone down in the Houston area that had pledged land and a building to that abortion facility, and that land and that building was in Wascom, Texas. Now, for a long time, what I knew Wascom as was a place that you better be careful if you're driving, because it's a speed trap. People would get tickets there all the time. But they would have great restaurants like Jim's Barbecue and David Beard's Catfish Village, and that's what the city prided themselves on. Those great restaurants, East Texas football, anytime you can have good barbecue and good football, I mean, that's great, The church community there, very strong. They didn't want abortion in their community. And so the mayor asked what he could do, encouraged him to pass an ordinance. He told me to expedite him that ordinance, and ended up with realizing that hadn't been done before. And so I put something together, and I remember I was at a Chick-fil-A in Longview, Texas, and I was staring at that thing, and I was thinking, I'm called to love my neighbor. Not just my unborn neighbor, but my born council member neighbor, the citizens of Wascom neighbor. And so I was wrestling with, I just can't give this ordinance without knowing that there's some other people backing it up, that you have the legal stamp to put on it. And so I texted my Senator Brian Hughes, who's an attorney, but also senator over Senate District 1, which includes Wascom. And I said, Senator Hughes, if this abortion facility moves to Wascom, that blood is going to be on Senate District 1 soil. And he said, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. His name is Jonathan F. Mitchell. And Senator Hughes described Jonathan Mitchell as someone who was a law clerk for Justice Scalia. He'd been quoted in court opinions by Alito and Thomas, a former Solicitor General for the state of Texas. Served on President Trump's legal team at one point. A very accomplished individual, was a professor at Stanford Law at one time. So hearing his background, I was like, this guy, we need a constitutional attorney on this. And so there in that Chick-fil-A parking lot, me, Senator Hughes, and Jonathan Mitchell were on a conference call. And Jonathan said, this is brilliant. I can't believe this hasn't been done before. And Senator Hughes said, Jonathan, do you think we could do with the law school ordinance what we're talking about doing with the Texas heartbeat bill? And I said, what are you planning on doing with the Texas heartbeat bill? And they said that they found a way, they thought they found a way to pass a law that would actually go into effect that the courts could not stop. And so, of course, I said, I'm game. We saw an ordinance passed in Wascom that was, from the point of conception, outlawing abortion. The ACLU said this ordinance makes it impossible for an abortion facility to set up shop in Wascom. And I said, praise the Lord. We started to see city after city, and eventually we saw Lubbock, Texas pass it. And Lubbock, Texas, there was a Planned Parenthood there. And Planned Parenthood sued the city of Lubbock, and Planned Parenthood lost. And Planned Parenthood had to stop performing abortions. And at that point we knew that if we saw victory in Lubbock, in one city, just wait till the Heartbeat Act went into effect. And it went into effect, and about half of the abortions in the state of Texas were shut down because the Heartbeat Act, the abortion industry couldn't stop. Now the abortion industry sued me. They sued several people. I was the only private citizen that they sued. Went up to the Supreme Court of the United States, and Jonathan represented me. We won. And so I was like really excited. Every time I was sued, I was getting excited because when you're standing for life, and you're standing for what is right, we want to be on the right side of history. And so now we're at a point where 67 cities and 3 counties have passed ordinances across 7 states prohibiting abortion within their jurisdiction. And we're doing something different in New Mexico than we're doing here in Texas, but we're going as far as we can using whatever novel approaches we can use to make sure that the residents of these communities are as safe as possible. And all of this is based on this principle of Amos 5:15, which says to hate evil, to love good, and to establish justice within the city gates. And perhaps the Lord, the God of hosts, be gracious on the remnant of Joseph. At this time, I want to go ahead and introduce a friend of mine. His name is A.J. Hurley, and A.J., one of the reasons I asked him to share today was because he was involved in something in Washington, D.C. Called Justice for the Five. And I'm going to let him tell you about that and what he saw. And, even though abortion is banned here in Texas, we have to remember what is happening at these abortion facilities all over the United States. And these are abortions that are performed on residents of U.S. citizens. And so, AJ, if you would come up and share.
How's it going, everybody? My name is AJ. So, I met Mark Lee Dixon outside the Supreme Court. I think that's where we met. Yeah, not outside the Supreme Court. 6 months before Roe v. Wade was overturned. We became friends, but it's just been a wild ride ever since. Most people start their pro-life career at a rally or outside of Planned Parenthood. I had a really unique background and experience where I started my pro-life kind of ministry inside the halls of a hospital, where I was putting little tiny babies on ventilators at UCLA Medical Center as a respiratory therapist. Every day I was looking basically into a womb, or what should be inside of a womb, which should be still growing inside of a womb, but because of whatever condition, be it cardiogenic, like fetal abnormalities, or congenital issues, or just prematurity, they were on a ventilator. And so I'm seeing babies either come out of the NICU or in the NICU at 21, 22, 23, 24 weeks. And I'm basically just looking at a child. But what's interesting is at the same hospital now, after Dobbs, after Prop 1 that passed in California, they could legally kill that baby up to the day of birth. And at the time, they could legally kill a child at that hospital. Well, you could even get around those, but they were killing, technically speaking, at 24 weeks. So I'm putting a baby on a ventilator at 21 weeks trying to save its life. And across the hall, ideologically, another one's being torn from limb 3 weeks later. And I'm looking at these children and I'm saying, what in the world is the difference here? And really it was nothing other than a mere fiat decision from the person who had that child, saying this one is valuable and this one isn't. So I'm putting all my time, energy, money, effort, we're all putting into this human being with arms and legs and fingers and toes just because we decided it's valuable. And so every day became honestly a walking rebuke to me, and that I was really doing nothing about this greatest Holocaust in my mind of our day, of unborn children. And so I just started getting involved. I started going to Planned Parenthood. At the time, I was like, didn't even know what silent counseling was. And I was like, I'm just gonna go. I thought it was crazy, and a lot of other people thought it was crazy. Needless to say, there's not a huge pro-life contingency in Los Angeles. But my wife and I started to try to adopt people's babies outside of Planned Parenthood. Man, and I knew from the day I showed up there, I was strangely filled with joy, knowing that God was doing something inside of me. And so I think the one thing I want to kind of talk about today, I don't have a lot of time, but is really the sin of our day, the blind spot of our day, our cultural idol or issue that leads, I think, to some of the greatest atrocities and human rights violations of our time, is really stems behind this understanding, or lack thereof, of the body. Ultimately in this movement, we have this understanding that you don't necessarily need to be religious or moral in order to think that baby killing is wrong, which is probably true, right? But ultimately, science can tell you when human life begins, but it really can't tell you why human life is valuable. So we have this philosophical ideology really that stems from an old ancient heresy called Gnosticism that says you could be human or biologically real, but that's not the real you. The real you, your values, your value, your hopes, dreams, aspirations, your soul, that's the real you. And this biological stuff isn't really of consequence, right? This dual split between the sacred, these kind of upper story sacred things, and these physical things that are really inconsequential. And so you often hear things in our society called, like, they'll say, you're not a body, but you have a body, but you're not a body, And that's really a half-truth, isn't it? Because one day, Christians, we know, I'm getting a lot of nods to my lecture here, so I'm assuming a lot of you guys are Christians. We have this understanding that even our bodies are going to be resurrected. And death really is just a separation of an aspect of who you are from the soul, from the body. And so, isn't it crazy that every human rights violation that we've ever seen in America has really made this distinction between who you are biologically and who you really are as true value? Let me give you an example. Slavery, racism. You couldn't deny that people that had black skin were human, but they weren't really valuable because they lacked this essential property that we deemed. And think about human trafficking, right? All of these transgenderism, that my biological makeup isn't the real me. I have to escape my biology and attain this level of the real me, which is something other, my thoughts, my feelings. That's the real me. So I need to escape the chasm of this body that is weighing me down. So we see the real issue of our day when it comes to abortion is that it's not enough to be a human being in order to have value. You have to be something else. You have to get to this other level of something in which we can now deem you valuable. And so you'll see some people say, 6-week abortion, I'm past that, I'm really not okay with that. Or, oh, it has a heartbeat. Or, oh, it has arms and legs. Or, it's conscious, now it has value. But isn't that crazy? We're taking these arbitrary categories that really have the same philosophical fundamental principle as that you could be human, but not a person. And that is, I think, fundamentally the issue of our day. And because I often wonder, how in the world can you look at a child and really think that we could do that to somebody? So I think, part of my journey has been trying to really break up this idea. And I think the battle for us is that your essential property is humanity. All of these other properties, these non-essential or accidental properties that you may possess or may not possess, like consciousness, or the ability to feel pain, or the ability to have a heartbeat, right? Some humans have these, or the ability is your skin color, or who your parents are. Sometimes we as society, I think, get caught in these things that are really arbitrary. And we're saying, consciousness. Why consciousness and not the ability to walk? Some people can walk and some people are play piano. Really, ultimately, it's arbitrary. And I think why we're here today is because we all understand, and that's the goal of society, or of us in society, is to actually really get through to the community that every single human being is made in God's image and thus has value and dignity and the right to life. And nobody has the right to take that life from them. So, I could go on for a long while. It's been quite the crazy last couple of years, but one thing that utterly changed my life was I was outside of Margaret Sanger Planned Parenthood in DC, and I took a photo of a driver unloading boxes from the abortion clinic into his delivery truck, medical waste on the side of it. I was just aghast. It took that, and it kind of went through the rounds. I mean, everybody shared it online. A friend of mine saw that. She was outside of, her and a friend were out, a group called POW, they were outside of DC abortion facility called Washington Surgery Center. And they saw another delivery driver pull up and went inside and started unloading boxes from inside of the abortion clinic out into this truck, and they loaded 3 boxes on there. So my friends had seen this photo, and it gave them an idea. I'm gonna go talk to this delivery driver. So they went up and talked to this guy and said, sir, he's loading the boxes. Sir, do you know what's in those boxes? And he's scurrying through his paperwork, doing his things. He's like, I drive a medical waste facility. We go to medical surgical centers. We go to all these things, liposuction, all this stuff. And he's talking about all of the different facilities that he goes to pick up medical waste to just deliver to an incinerator. And they said, sir, do you know what place that you're in right now? Do you know what building that is? And he's like, I don't know, it's just another stop on my way. And they're like, no, sir. That's an abortion clinic. And inside those boxes are the fetal remains of the children of your community. And he stops, and by God's grace, he's looking through his paperwork. He looks up and sees this is an abortion clinic, and the lights go on, and he is just wrecked. He's freaking out. He doesn't know what to do, and they use this divine opportunity to say, sir, we want to give these children the dignity that they deserve. These are human beings, and they need and deserve a proper burial. He throws up his hands and says, I'm not looking. I scan these boxes in, walks around, and my friends look at themselves, and they're like, this is it. They take a box. They go home. They call me up. My wife and I rush down there. They open the box, and inside was 115 aborted children, and 5 of them were full term. And so at this point, it was just a crazy. I mean, none of us knew what the heck to do. None of us knew. I mean, it became the craziest 2 weeks of my life. Not only after this thing, or before this thing, during it, but after it. I mean, my wife and I and these 2 girls, we spent 2 weeks, like literally, we ate, slept, all there just trying to figure out what to do. And ultimately what we came to is, okay, well, what would we do if this was a 5-year-old that we had found? You do the same thing with unborn children as you do with born children. So we made decisions. We took pictures of all the babies, and we called the police and made arrangements for the police to come and pick up these babies. The first trimester of babies, there was 110 of them. We delivered, and we didn't even know if this was illegal or anything. We just called a Catholic priest up who was a heroic individual. And we made plans with him to go deliver these babies, to go and deliver them to the priest, to have a burial. And that was crazy because it's like, on one hand, it's like, these are human beings and human corpses that were traveling. Like, what are the laws on that, right? But on the other hand, they're trash. You know what I mean? It's like, on one hand, it's trash, but then when it's convenient to the other side, are they going to come after us because suddenly they're human beings now? Like, are you going to admit that? And so, but we risked a lot to do that. And we had a lawyer draft up a letter to work with Live Action. The lawyer drafted up a letter to have the police come pick these children up. And this goes to show the level of corruption. And I know I've gone a little bit over my time, sorry. But this kind of goes to show the level of corruption is the police came not to pick the babies up, but to pick one of the girls up. And FBI shows up with a whole host of media running a story, not that we had found these babies and delivered them over to the police for them to investigate the crimes that we saw, but the FBI and the news outlets are running a story that these crazed pro-lifers are harboring fetuses in their apartments.
Oh my gosh.
And that becomes the story that the world runs. Goes to show you the level of corruption, not only in our government, but also in the media. But it did become the story really of a lifetime, for me at least, and it became a huge national news story, justice for the 5, these babies. Some of them had evidence of partial birth abortion, some of them had, think of the crazy chances. No one had ever seen what's in these boxes, ever. But the one box, finally, in 20 years of them incinerating children, the one box that we finally found, there's evidence of partial birth abortion, infanticide. One of the babies was still in its amniotic sac, completely undisturbed, 3rd trimester child. One of its skulls been snipped on the back of its head, classic partial birth abortion fashion. And the crazy just thing about this whole story was it took Mayor Bowser and the DC PD not even a work day to come out on a public new press conference and saying, no autopsies are going to be found, no investigation is going to be performed, all these babies were legally aborted, and that's all we're going to do about it. So, I think what is the takeaway for a setting like this, right? That's the question. Why did I come here? I came here because what I've seen with Mark Lee Dixon's ministry, I call it a ministry, even though it's highly political, right, is not the fact that these ordinances, that's not what impresses me most. It's this reality. It's you guys. Because, you've probably heard the line before, the price for freedom is eternal vigilance, right? Unless the average person, each community rises up and takes ownership of your town, your city, your backyard, unless the people of God rise up and really understand their role in ending child sacrifice in America and standing in the gap against the injustices of our day, we will lose this country. And what is happening at this city level, to be honest with you, is a microcosm of what needs to happen to take our country back. We are losing America, and it's been because people like you have not risen up. So God bless all of you for being here, because this is how we win. All politics is local, and praise God for people like you, because if people were like you in every city and stood up and rose up, we would not be in the shape that we're in.
So there are about 20,000 cities in America, and about 76% of those cities are 5,000 and less. And in addition to that, about 42% of that, less than 500 each. U.S. Census Bureau has called America a nation of small towns. And as I've traveled across the United States, there's no doubt in my mind that America really is, the majority of the governments in America are pro-life. That the communities they live in are full of pro-life individuals that don't want abortion in their backyard. And that's what we saw in Waskell, and that's also what we saw in Lubbock. What we saw in Great Plains, Texas, and in Crawford, Texas, and in Odessa, Texas. All over Texas. Texas is a pro-life state. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, we saw all the abortion bans go into effect. The pre-Roe statutes were in effect. It ended abortion in Texas. The Texas trigger law would go into effect the following August. A few months later, and we saw the penalties be upped. And of course, we had the Heartbeat Act still in effect too. And so many people say, well, it's over, right? Our battle is done. And I said, no. Because what we saw is that a news article came out, Dallas Morning News, and Whole Women's Health, which has had abortion facilities in Fort Worth and McKinney and McAllen and Austin. Well, what happened to them? Well, they decided to go to southeast New Mexico. And so we said, not on our watch. Southeast New Mexico is pretty much Texas. And so we went to Senator David Gallegos. So reached out to me and he said, Mark, they're targeting hogs. And I said, yeah, we've got to do something. And so what did we do? We found a unique way to do an ordinance over there, not based on New Mexico laws, because we all know New Mexico, something else. It's not Texas as far as the leadership goes. So we based it on some federal statutes that were passed in 1873, which known as the Comstock Act, and we saw Hobbs pass an ordinance, and guess what happened? Whole Women's Health retreated. They were looking at Clovis. We passed it there. What happened at Whole Women's Health? They retreated. They went 3 hours from Clovis, 5 hours from Hobbs to Albuquerque. And I hate that for Albuquerque because Albuquerque has a ton of abortion facilities right now. But we ended up pushing the abortion industry that far. And so we saved southeast New Mexico. And so people were asking, well, what are y'all planning on doing in Texas? Why are y'all still doing ordinances? And our response was, there's still work to be done. You see, even before Roe v. Wade was overturned, we had a plan to address the abortions that are performed on residents of these cities. Like, it is actually against the law of Odessa for an abortion to be performed on an Odessa resident. And so, it doesn't matter if that abortion is performed in New Mexico or Washington, D.C., it's not allowed by the city of Odessa. And we started to look at the problems in our state, that there are loopholes that have not been closed. We have seen abortion trafficking. There's a movie out called Sound of Freedom. It's been really big, and in that movie, it's talking about human trafficking, the sex industry. Guys, 100% of the human trafficking, sex trafficking industry is pro-abortion. There's not 1% of the human trafficking, sex trafficking industry that's pro-life. And what we've seen is, of course, the sex trafficking industry, well, what happens when these girls get pregnant? They take them for abortions. And what we realized needed to be done is we had to address abortion trafficking. But what we realized is when we address abortion trafficking, it actually, by default, ends up addressing sex trafficking. And so we decided we have to address these things. And I'm just going to kind of lay out what the ordinances do in post-Roe Texas that the current laws do not do. So the first provision And this is an example of a county ordinance. So Mitchell County is the only county in Texas so far that's passed a sanctuary county for the unborn ordinance. Many other counties are looking at it. But the first provision is prohibiting abortion and aiding and abetting abortion in the unincorporated parts of the county, or for the city ordinance would be within the incorporated part of the city. And so some people say, well, that's already done in the state of Texas. Abortion's outlawed from the point of conception. You're right. But how is it enforced? It's enforced through the public. I mean, it's enforced through the government. Well, this ordinance is only enforced through private lawsuits, like the Texas Heartbeat Act. Well, why is that important? So, in 1968, there was a guy by the name Curtis Wayne Boyd. He was a county health officer in Henderson County. Anyone know where Henderson County is? So Athens, Texas. Well, Curtis Wayne Boyd, county health officer, he performed 10,000 illegal abortions in Athens, Texas. He was on the school board, he pushed sex ed, he got sex ed there at Athens ISD. He was trying to get sex ed among kindergartners. Can you imagine that in 1968? But Curtis Wayne Boyd was good friends with a guy named Bill Kugel, an attorney there locally. And Bill Kugel in a documentary said, we're always hoping that Curtis Wayne wouldn't get caught. He was friends with city council members that knew exactly what he was doing, business partners. Everyone knew what Curtis Wayne Boyd was doing. 10,000 illegal abortions in 1968. We had good laws. They weren't being enforced because people in leadership were turning the other way. 10,000 illegal abortions. What this provision does is it takes the Heartbeat Act is only enforced through, if it's violated, if abortion performed on detectable heartbeat, then anyone can file a lawsuit against the abortionist and anyone aiding and abetting the abortionist. Well, that private citizen filing a lawsuit, it's only from the point of detectable heartbeat forward in the state of Texas. There's nothing in Texas that covers from conception to heartbeat in terms of giving it to the people, allowing people to file lawsuits. Called creating a private cause of action. Trump just recently, he said first day in office, what he is going to be pushing for is the creation of a private right of action. If he's elected, he wants to push for a private right of action for those who do gender transition surgeries on minors. I was like, hey, more power to them on that. You know, we need to fight back against every evil in society. But so this provision, I believe, if we had this provision in state law back in 1968, I think we could have stopped Curtis Wayne Boyd. Well, what's so big about one guy? Now, 10,000 illegal abortions, that's big, but here's the bigger picture. Curtis Wayne Boyd went on to do illegal abortions in Dallas, Texas. And then Curtis Wayne Boyd went to, you know, and I have to say this here, I was in Atlanta in a meeting with about this many people, a little bit more, but in Lano, Texas, there was a lady that came up to me afterwards and she said, I was one of those that got an illegal abortion from Boyd in Dallas. Broke my heart. She said for 40 years she's wrestled with that. And she said, we're gonna make sure this passes. I'm like, no, and I'm like, 100%, we're gonna get it done. But Curtis Wayne Boyd went on to Santa Fe, and then he opened up a facility in Albuquerque, New Mexico. 1973 rolled around, Roe v. Wade came out, and what did Curtis Wayne Boyd do? He returned to Texas to open up the first legal abortion facility there in Dallas, Texas. He has killed more people than any abortionist in America. His 2 facilities, he himself, just by himself, and there was a court case where there was a deposition that a friend of mine was involved with, and they got him on record, him by himself, with his hands, over 250,000 lives he has taken in his lifetime. I mean, it's more now. But his 2 facilities, you're looking at that, it's about like over 800,000 now. One guy. We could have stopped him back then. I really believe we could have stopped him had we had a provision, a private enforcement mechanism in place. Next provision that the ordinances do that is not currently covered by state law: abortions performed on the residents of the community. And so what that does, it says that if anyone is performing an abortion or aiding and abetting an abortion on a resident of that community, then let the abortionist and anyone who's aiding and abetting that abortionist, let's bring them to the courts of Texas. So the story that AJ shared just a few minutes ago about the surgeon clinic there in Washington, D.C. If one of those lives was taken, and it was a resident of this area, and this area had an ordinance passed, will bring that abortionist into the courts of Texas. Because he has violated Texas law. So that's the importance of that provision. Guys, if abortion is murder, I believe it is. In fact, I said abortion is murder many times, and I got sued for it. Went through the courts, Supreme Court of Texas, said it. Unanimously, they agreed with me that I can say that. Guys, if abortion is murder in Texas, it's also murder elsewhere as well. It's the taking of an innocent life made in the image of God. And we've got to see the end of abortion in this nation. Abortion-inducing drugs. So, this provision prohibits drugs being used to end the life of an innocent child made in the image of God. What would happen now? None of this ordinance penalizes the mother of the unborn child. So let me be clear. Right now in Texas, a mother could order, though it be illegal, abortion pills online, and it be brought into this state. But the ones that are violating the ordinance that's passed would be those who are sending the abortion pills. There's a situation in Galveston right now, Galveston County, where a lawsuit has been filed against some people that helped get these abortion pills to a mother, and the father is the one who sued these people that brought these abortion-inducing drugs. It's a first wrongful death lawsuit filed by a father of an unborn child. It's going to be very interesting to see that play out. But under city ordinance, that provision is there. Abortion trafficking. This is one of my favorite parts of this ordinance. By planes, trains, and automobiles, we're going to stop abortion in Texas. Abortion trafficking says that the roads and the runways, abortion traffickers, if they try to use those, they can be sued into oblivion. They try to use those for abortion trafficking, they can be sued into oblivion. Well, what does that mean? If the abortion traffickers want to continue their practice of abortion trafficking, and say Goliad had passed an ordinance that prohibits abortion trafficking, then they're going to have to find a way around Goliad County or Goliad City, whichever passes the ordinance. And so when we passed this in Mitchell County is, for those who don't know where Mitchell County is, it's up there between Odessa and Abilene, and specifically the cities up there are Colorado City and Westbrook and Lorain. It's just a little ways east of Big Spring, and that area, I-20 is completely off limits now to abortion traffickers. If abortion traffickers use I-20 in Mitchell County, they can be sued into oblivion. The little part of 84 going up to Lubbock in Mitchell County, very small part, off limits. Guys, I was mapping it out. It's going to take them hours to go around Mitchell County. And what we want to see is we want to see a wall be built that, if the abortion traffickers cross that line, then they could be sued into oblivion. We want to completely run them out of business. The groups that sued me for saying abortion is murder, one of them is called the Lilith Fund. Now, Lilith, for those who know about the character, demon that preys on women and children. When I first realized a group called the Lilith Fund sued me, and I realized that they were named after a demon that preys on women and children in their abortion group, I'm like, that's a perfect name for them. Because they literally prey on women and children. But that group, which their lawsuit against me was funded by a guy named Warren Buffett, Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation. He doesn't like pro-lifers. But, other groups like Satanic Temple. Satanic Temple, they want to perform abortions on Texas residents. It's crazy. They want to say that it's a religious right. It's not. But we've got to go after abortion trafficking. We've got to stop that. Now, the disposal of remains. The reason this got in there is not because of people like AJ who are giving proper burial to unborn children from an abortion facility. The reason why this is in there is because of waste management companies that are taking dead babies in New Mexico and Colorado and bringing them back to Texas and treating them as trash. It's happening. It was happening in Amarillo and McKinney, Texas. And so we specifically, Amarillo is looking at passing an ordinance, and it has all these things and plus some more things. But this was something that had to go in the Amarillo ordinance. And then we were down in Llano talking to some people at the county and the city, and they said, well, we want this in our ordinance too, because they said, if it's happened elsewhere, we want to make sure it doesn't happen. Like, let's close the loopholes. So we ended up we made it standard for all ordinances. And then last but not least, criminal organizations. Considering these groups that are involved in these activities as criminal organizations, they can't do business in the city and the county. There should not be any business that's in any of our communities that's making money off of the murder of innocent children. We need to start treating these groups like we treated the mafia before, right? We've got to shut down this organized abortion syndicate. And so all of these things together create an environment that is so strong in allowing, in prohibiting abortion trafficking, any kind of abortion activity within the city, the limits of the unincorporated parts or the city limits. Now, a few things, and I'll do Q&A here. Some people have asked, well, what kind of support do y'all have on this? So Representative Dustin Burrows, he recently asked me, he's like, Mark, do we have any counties that have passed this yet? And I said, well, Representative Burrows, we're working on that. And then we ended up seeing Mitchell County, but But he said, we really need to see this because he said, there's so many loopholes we've got to close. And he said, what helped us so much in passing the Heartbeat Act was the cities addressing these things and helping us. Dustin Burrows does not believe that we would have had the Heartbeat Act passed had it not been for the Sanctuary City effort. Mary Ziegler, a Roe v. Wade historian who wrote a book called Roe: History of a National Obsession, a Yale University Press professor at UC Berkeley, she has gone, now she's not on our side, but she has said that she does not believe that had it not been for Sanctuary City ordinances, she believes the Heartbeat Act would not have been passed. And she believes that Roe v. Wade would have not been overturned had it not been for Texas' role in the Heartbeat Act. The Heartbeat Act was right before the Dobbs hearing by a month. And it showed the court that if they didn't overturn Roe v. Wade, then we would use this method to shut down abortion. And so both pro-life and pro-abortion historians credit the Texas Heartbeat Act and Sanctuary City Initiative as playing a role in the end of abortion in America. And so this effort here is believed that the more counties and cities pass these kind of ordinances, it helps the states to close this on a statewide level. The goal is not to get every single city and every single county in Texas to pass ordinances like this, although I think we could pass that in a lot. But the goal is for just enough to pass these that it helps the leadership of Texas do this on a statewide level. And so with that being said, another thing too is we're seeing an attorney in New Mexico told me, he's like, Mark, this is so important because they're seeing so many license plates from Texas over there, and the more that we can do to stop this abortion trafficking of people going over for abortions, that's what the majority of abortions in New Mexico are on Texas residents. But we've got to do everything we can to stop that. And we're seeing women say they're so glad that these laws have been passed because women, deep down, they don't want abortion. What they want to hear is that they can be a great mother to that child. And outside of an abortion facility in Shreveport, Louisiana, I would say it all the time. My message was, you can be a great mom to that child. And I would have mothers come up to me in tears, and we would help them out. And that's the Texan way. Texans, abortion is anti-Texas. Helping mothers out is pro-Texas, and that's why every single ordinance talks about the Alternatives to Abortion program and everything that the state of Texas is doing and all the resources provided. So it's not just the law of what can't take place in the area, but also all the resources available in the communities. And one last thing I'll mention too, some people, question the timing on things. Well, why is this so urgent? Well, our current president has committed to abortion access in every zip code, even in states which have banned abortion. The current administration is the most aggressive pro-abortion administration in the history of America. And he is wanting abortion access everywhere, even here in Goliad County. And so we have to do everything we can to fight against this radical administration. And we need to make sure we win this election, presidential election. We can't we can't continue to have someone like Biden in office with an agenda that they're completely reckless. The steps that they have taken to, with the abortion-inducing drugs, abortion pill ML, that is our battle, and we have to continue to fight this fight. This time, if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer any kind of questions that anyone might have.
What do you run up against when you go to any one of these counties that listen to you but say, we're not interested? Do they tell you why? What would keep them from doing it?
So usually, it's an issue of fear at times is real. I mean, people at times, maybe they're afraid of getting sued, or maybe they're afraid of, going against what their city or county attorney is saying. And, Texas Association of Counties is not going to be a fan of this. Texas Municipal League was not a fan of these ordinances either. In Wascom, Texas Municipal League said, well, y'all can't do that. In every single city, they said, you can't do that. And what did we do? We continued to stand. Every single city and county that considers these ordinances, we give a letter from my attorney, Jonathan F. Mitchell, saying that if they face any kind of lawsuit, that he will represent them at no cost to the city/county and taxpayers. And we're good to that. And what we did specifically, like we hear sometimes, like we heard, they were saying, well, cities don't have the authority to do this. And I'm like, oh, yes, they do. They can pass ordinances based on the health and welfare of their residents. And we always believed that cities could outlaw abortion. Now, early on, one of the arguments against counties passing ordinances was, counties, they can pass ordinances regulating fire ants because the state of Texas says they can pass ordinances regulating fire ants. But the argument for a long time was counties have not given explicit authority to pass ordinances prohibiting abortion. So, hearing that, there were a number of people that said we need to change that. So in the Heartbeat Act, provision was passed specifically allowing counties, political subdivisions, counties and cities to be very explicit that they can pass ordinances restricting abortion. And so that's I was involved in making sure that got into the Heartbeat Act. It was my major contribution there to the Heartbeat Act. And so we're really proud of that provision. Only one county has done it so far, just because we got busy with so many other states and so much stuff was going on. But now, we're working on that, and we've got several counties. Ellis County is looking at doing something. There's been a lot of discussion in Eastland, and of course we feel like we've got a good shot at Lubbock and some of these other places too. But some of that, but the ordinance in the whereas clauses that we have all this spelled out as far as the county authority, the city authority, the whole 9 yards. The attorneys for all these cities, these 67 cities, very few of those attorneys have actually been supportive. Mitchell County's attorney was supportive. But guys, most attorneys, what are they?
Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, Lubbock is a hilarious situation. So the city of Lubbock ended up, Senator Perry, Representative Dustin Burrows, who's an attorney, and Representative John Frullo encouraged the city council of Lubbock to pass an ordinance. And they did not want to pass the ordinance, right? Planned Parenthood was coming, going to set up a shop, and they did. And Mayor Van Pope and the others didn't want to touch this. So their legal department didn't want to touch it. Because why? Because if they spoke against this, then it puts them at odds with Senator Perry and everyone else, and no one wanted to be on the chopping block, right? So what did the city do? They decided to get outside help. They hired a law firm in Houston, Texas, called Olson and Olson. And a guy named Art Pertile was the attorney that ended up being over it. You know, Art Pertile used to be the city attorney for Waco, Texas, and he was the one that pro-lifers ended up suing the city of Waco because they put a bubble law pushing back the pro-lifers. Art Pertile was not a good guy to pro-lifers, and of course, the pro-life community, John Pashada, a great defender of life there in Waco, they won against Art Pertile in the city of Waco when they tried to keep them away from the abortion facility. But city of Lubbock, they hired Olson and Olson. And guys, the Olson and Olson, that family, that law firm, they're all over Texas. They're not conservative people. One of the Olson family members is in bed with Planned Parenthood, literally. He's married to the board chair of Planned Parenthood. Can't get any more in bed with Planned Parenthood than that. And so we ended up calling out the city of Lubbock leadership when they hired a law firm that had connections with Planned Parenthood. If you ask Hillary Clinton if she agrees with this abortion ban, she's going to say she hates it. It's unconstitutional. It's against the state of Texas. That's what Hillary Clinton would say. The beliefs of these attorneys, it really does make a difference. In Centerville, Texas, 85% Trump vote there in that area. The city council said, we always do what our attorneys say. I was talking to a group of pastors, and I said, the council says they always do what the attorney says, and the attorney's in bed with Planned Parenthood. What do we do? And so it was packed. They showed up to the city council meeting, and everyone realized, the mayor said, you know, I think on this one item, we cannot listen to the city attorney on this one. And Jonathan Mitchell, the attorney that I work with, I mean, Solicitor General, former Solicitor General of Texas, that's what Ted Cruz was at one time, our state. You know, handling all the appellate cases. Someone in Kenny Paxton, the Attorney General's office has been very supportive of these ordinances and these efforts. And, you know, I know Abbott's office has been very supportive as well, you know, behind the scenes, and very excited about this grassroots effort. And of course, you know, we're doing this stuff, but we're also doing some other things like behind the scenes with, you know, there's other issues that we've got to address in Texas too. And so, but of course, this is something that if people can't be born, then you can't even address the other issues, right? And so, but a lot of the opposition, it's that. So, any other?
You had answered, Mark, on so the counties and cities have recourse to a legal team at no expense to the taxpayers.
In the whole process, like, I don't charge for anything. Like, the writing of the ordinance, the preparation of all the other accompanying documents of explanation, I do all that at no cost to the city and city and county and taxpayers. It's all free. So I like traveling Texas. It's really great to see all these sites, and I've always wanted to spend time in Goliad, and it's great to be here where, you know, every Texas student we have our Texas history class, and it's always nothing like being in the cities where you've heard lectures from your favorite teachers on. So,
What's the process?
so with Mitchell County and with cities, it has to be placed on the agenda, of course. And Mitchell County was one vote, and it was done in a week. But then some cities takes multiple votes. I've seen this process done in 3 days. I've seen it done in 3 years. But it takes, of course, in order for an ordinance to pass, then it has to be a majority vote. And so, if you have a majority that you think are ready to pass something, then of course I encourage moving forward. If you see that there's some hesitation, that you don't think you have the votes, then I recommend not moving it forward. We played this out in Odessa like a lot. Odessa, Javier Hoven ran for the mayor of Odessa along with 2 others on the platform of making Odessa a sanctuary city for the unborn. And they ended up being 1 vote shy. They thought they had someone that was for it, that was already on council, that turned out wasn't for it. But the next election, they solved that and ended up being 6-1. And now the city of Odessa can pass whatever. You know, one thing I like to point out, the mayor of Odessa, first Hispanic mayor, Javier Hoven, he passed a resolution. Now, I don't support resolutions. For things like this, they don't do anything. We need laws, not statements. But a resolution I really support was one that Javier Hoven passed as mayor of Odessa. He said, it's like, we're passing a resolution declaring Jesus Christ Lord of Odessa. And some people were like, well, what are you going to say to those people that have a problem with that? And he said, well, if they have a problem with that, they can take it up with the Lord of Odessa. His name's Jesus Christ. So, gotta love that guy. So, people are wanting to see boldness. They're wanting to see, standing up for these truths which we know and love and hold dear to our hearts. So.
Well, what is the next step, say, for Victoria? That who do you need to be in front of? What is the next step to start this moving? So
I always encourage, there's an online petition at sanctuarycitiesfortheunborn.com, and then there's also these things that if anyone's interested, they can fill out when they hand to me, or they can email me or whatever. But usually I encourage citizens to pass out these. The online link is easiest to circulate. People sign from where they're at. We don't use that to fundraise or anything. I'm against fundraising. I really don't like fundraising. Other people can do it. I don't want to. But I actually have a rule where when I go to communities, if I'm speaking in church, and a pastor starts to mention we're gonna pass the ARPA plan, I'm like, don't. Give that money to a pregnancy center in the area. We don't want anything. But people sign the online petition. We want to know how much support there is in the community. And so in this area, I would recommend, and in Victoria as well, circulate the petition, and then whenever we get to a point where that's on the agenda, we have to have an elected official, someone on the commission or council that's willing to move it forward and get it on the agenda. And so up until we have that, basically it's just circulating the petition. Now, if you end up being, if the council member is like, hey, we want to do this, then, let's get in contact with them. And if they understand and they're for it and they're ready for it 100%, well, do we have the votes? They think we do, then let's get the pastors together. I'm known for doing last minute pastor breakfasts, and you know we meet up. There's been times where I've had 6 meals a day, you know, just meeting with pastors and community leaders, and but whatever it takes. But it doesn't always happen overnight. It's very rare that we see like a 3-day situation. Usually it's, you know, a couple of weeks or a month. I don't like it when it drags out 3 years, you know, because I mean there's a lot of lives that are affected, and we can save a lot of lives from this. And so, but yeah, to answer the short answer, sign the petition, circulate, get many more signatures until you get to the point where you have a leader on council that's ready to move it forward. We'll give an ordinance, we'll give a letter attached to that from Jonathan Mitchell saying, if it's this version of the ordinance passed, because he has a record, he doesn't like to lose. And so if people start, you know, Frankensteining the ordinance and putting, you know, their own words in it, like it just, there was a council member in Big Spring, Texas that he said, well, I don't like this word unlawful, or I think it said criminal. It's like, I don't like this word criminal. He's like, let's change that to unsavory. And I'm like, I don't know the legal definition for unsavory, you know? I mean, but it ended up being changed to unlawful. So, I mean, that worked. But we just couldn't use unsavory. But yeah, so that's the process, and be patient with your elected officials. If they, you know, the mayor of Llano, man, he's gung-ho. He's ready to do this. I think on the 21st of this month, we're going to see a victory. And I'm very optimistic. There's a council member's husband that they went to the Brave Books reading thing. I don't know exactly what it's called, but Kirk Cameron's doing it. But the husband went to a meeting and with this councilwoman, and he was like, you know, we're going to have to answer to Jesus Christ one day, and we're called to be a voice, to stand for our convictions. And he was like, I don't know exactly how my wife's voting. But he's like, I know what I'm going to encourage her, you know, as her constituent, you know. And so, you know, and that's what, if people want their leaders to see, their leaders to pass this, and they need to communicate that to their leaders. So, any other questions?
Are you Victoria's League?
Yes, sir, Victoria.
Yeah. Who's it from Goliad?
Any other questions?
Can you explain how it would be found out if abortion trafficking is happening on certain highways?
Absolutely. So this is something that it's not like someone is checking. Just like no one's going to be checking the mail to see if there's abortion-inducing drugs. It's an issue of, so this ordinance is purely enforced through private enforcement. Government's not enforcing this. So all that's happening here is allowing the citizens to file a lawsuit against those who are violating, if there's proper evidence found. Now, say you are say there's a grandmother in a community, and her granddaughter is pregnant, and there's someone that is coming to pick her up for an abortion. Well, that grandmother could say, look, there's a law that's been passed, and if you take my grandbaby from this porch, from this house, for an abortion in Mexico, I'm able to file a lawsuit against you. So that's how it could play out. You know, a father could say that to someone who is taking. A father could say that to a guy who's trying to take his daughter for an abortion in Mexico. the lawsuit wouldn't be filed against the daughter, the granddaughter, it would be filed against the one who is taking. And if the Lilith Fund is funding that, then you could sue the Lilith Fund as well. And so it's a deterrent. Now, technically, are there ways around that? Absolutely. The girl could go outside of the city or county, picked up outside of that area. But as far as that area, it's just not going to be allowed in the city, not to be allowed in the county, any kind of abortion trafficking. Now, if she was outside the city and then, so that's how all that works. And so it has to be, and there's Supreme Court cases that say that states have a vested interest in their residents, even for things that take place across state lines. So there's 3 or 4 Supreme Court cases that has been very clear about that. So, there's also something called the Federal Mann Act. And so prostitution across state lines, that kind of stuff, taking people across state lines for immoral purposes, well, abortion is an unlawful and immoral purpose. And so all of this tracks with the Federal Mann Act. And so we're very confident that all this would be upheld in the courts. Any other questions?
Who do we talk to? I'm gonna leave this room, I'm gonna go to the website. Who's in my room? Who's in the room with me? I'm gonna go to the website, I'm gonna study the website, I'm gonna look at those flyers. Who do I go to after this day? If I have a question.
Well, you can always reach out to me in terms of understanding the ordinance and the process. I encourage people to get to know their elected officials.
Yes.
A lot of times when we have these meetings, people say, well, we don't really know who our council members are, or who our county commissioners. And so it's a learning experience. And these people are elected to office and they represent people, and they're people that want to hear from their constituents. And so getting to know those leaders goes a long way. And a lot of times people are like, oh, I didn't realize I knew the mayor, knew the county commissioner, etc.
Yeah, we're talking about agendas, we're talking about city agenda, county commissioner agenda, what other agendas?
Those would be the primary ones that, the city passes. Goliad would be just for the incorporated part of Goliad. The county ordinance would only cover the unincorporated part. It wouldn't cover Goliad if it was passed. And we always encourage, even in states where Texas, it's counties pass things for the unincorporated parts. Florida actually allows counties can pass it for the incorporated cities within, which we don't even encourage that in Florida, and we're working on some places over there. But yeah, here in Texas, it's so there's, for this county, there's only two entities at play, Goliad and Goliad County, and that would actually cover the entire county.
And that's Victoria as well. Yeah.
Victoria County has other incorporated municipalities though.
It's just one.
Is it just one?
Just a city.
Okay, I thought there was.
This is city.
My mistake.
So is there any efficacy if, this group decides they want to continue forward to have another meeting here or elsewhere and send out an email to their council members and invite them to attend?
Yeah, so what I would encourage, usually when I go, I spend a lot of time going back and forth to communities, and what I really like to do is after there's a meeting like this, sometimes we'll have a pastor's breakfast and leaders. I don't mind just meeting with a pastor one-on-one or a commissioner one-on-one. It's always, any meeting needs to follow be respectful of quorums and not, have a majority of elected officials there, to where it's a quorum. And so we try to be mindful of that. So don't expect to meet with, 4 of the 5 council members or whatever, in one meeting, one at a time, 2
Can you
at a
speak
time.
at a city council meeting?
Yes, now my rule though is I don't bring an ordinance forward unless there is someone on the council or commission that has asked me to, like for instance, Lano, the mayor has requested that I show up tomorrow to introduce the ordinance. And so a number of pastors are speaking during public comment, and I'm gonna be presenting the ordinance. And then someone there is planning on, I believe someone is going to make a motion for it to be on the agenda for the 21st for the city council to pass. And so I don't mind doing that. There's Mitchell County. I showed up to a meeting and did an introduction of the ordinance, and one of the commissioners made a motion to. They said, hey, we want to be first. We don't want any other county to beat us from being first. And so they said, can we schedule a special meeting for later this week? And they did. And so Monday meeting was there, and then had to come back Friday, and they passed it. And the county attorney there was very supportive. So we don't always have that, but in that case we did.
So A through F is the ordinance.
Yeah, these are the major points. So these are all county ordinances that we're pushing right now have these provisions, and I can get the text of what that would look like to anyone here who's interested. But that's the ordinance.
Mark, you're staying in town tonight, and are you available in the morning to visit with anybody?
I am. So I am available for breakfast. I'm planning on jumping over and seeing a couple sites here in Goliad, and then I'll be hitting the road to Lano will be my final destination tomorrow at 6 o'clock. There's a introduction meeting introducing the ordinance to the city council there. So. Not too bad of a drive, but on Tuesday night, Chandler, Texas is planning on passing an ordinance. So Chandler's in Henderson County, right smack dab by Tyler. So that's what I have for this week. I'm thinking of jumping back to Goliad on Wednesday, but haven't solidified that completely. Towards the end of the week, I've just got to fly out of Texas to go to Florida, and got a county over there that is having they have an interest meeting in a church, a Catholic church over there. So, but we're doing this everywhere, guys. I mean, this is we've got a county in Arizona that's interested, a county in Virginia that's interested. There's not one place that we're not looking at. And we have cities in Illinois and California. We got more signatures coming in from California than any state in America. And guys, California is looking at Texas.
Wow.
I was over. Me and AJ both were over in Beverly Hills, California. And there was an abortion facility called the DuPont Clinic, an abortion spa that was going to be opening in Beverly Hills. In fact, there was a pro-life effort led by survivors of the abortion Holocaust and many other groups. And they ended up. What the other put up something that said Beverly Kills. I mean, there were some clever things they did. But you know what happened in Beverly Hills? The DuPont facility, they're not going to be there anymore. You see, when people rise up, we can do incredible things. And these ordinances, of course, to some degree, is it being proactive? Well, it is being proactive, but don't get me wrong, I mean, a lot of this is happening in y'all's county already. The abortion trafficking is happening right now in Goliad County. We know that, and I know that the county had passed a resolution on addressing human trafficking and everything. The border crisis is crazy. We have to do everything we can. I've been asked to look at a number of places. Like, we have certain areas that are high priority right now in terms of along the Texas-New Mexico border. So we're working on that really, really hard right now. And our goal is we really do want it's kind of like, what's that stuff called
Diatomaceous earth.
Yes, that. I always had a hard time. I had speech impediment growing up. But it's kind of like that for abortion traffickers, right? So if they cross it, they risk a lot. So we want to do everything we can to stop that.
Where do you put your head at night? Where do you live?
I've only been home one day this year, so
Oh.
I might end up being home for a week by the end of the year, but there's so much work to be done. And
God bless you.
but let me go ahead and if there's not any more questions, if not, close in prayer.
Yep, I would like to say something when you get through praying.
Father God, Lord, I just thank you so much for everyone in this room tonight. God, I don't know who is in this room and who's not in this room. I don't know who in here knows their elected officials, or who in this room might even be an elected official. But God, I know that nothing is by accident, that everyone in this room is here for a reason. And God, I thank you that everyone in here has heard this presentation tonight. God, your word in Amos 5:15 says to hate evil, to love good, and to establish justice within the city gates. God, that there's a responsibility placed upon us in our own backyards of where we live. And each one of us makes up a part of the larger whole. And God, we don't know maybe why we're here completely, but we're here to be obedient to you, God. Let us be obedient with the information that we've received today, and let us wrestle with what you'd have us do with this information. God, I pray that simple actions would lead to saved lives, not just in this city and this county, but in the entire state of Texas and in the entire United States of America. For so long, people said that Roe v. Wade would never be overturned, and then it was. And God, I know with all of my heart that Texas played a role in that, and that cities rising up played a role in that. God, I thank you for this day. It's in your precious and holy name we pray. Amen. One last thing I'm going to say too. It's a PS moment. 7 cities in East Texas were sued by the ACLU. And this was early on. This was the first lawsuit. Guys, I was terrified. Like, I was running around, and I remember talking to representatives from every city that was sued. And there's 12 cities that outlawed abortion at that time. And I talked to all 7 cities that were sued. I talked to all 12 cities to make sure that the others weren't sued. But I remember talked to everyone, said, hey, it's okay, you have legal representation. Talked to my attorney, and I remember I went to a hotel room where I was at that time, I remember just throwing up for 30 minutes. My nerves were shot. And I was like, God, what have I done? These cities are sued by the Lilith Fund and the T Fund, and what am I going to do? And 30 minutes of throwing up, and then I just pulled myself together. I was like, Mark, the Lord has not brought you this far to abandon you. The Lord has a purpose. Guys, that lawsuit lasted 3 months. Didn't cost those cities 1 cent. Those cities came out victorious. The ACLU was the one that brought the lawsuit. ACLU backed down. But in that 3-month period, there was a mayor from Whiteface, Texas, up in Cap Rock, west of Lubbock. And that mayor, Mayor Judy Devers, will never forget this call. She called me and she said, Mark, I couldn't sleep at night. What would God do if we didn't pass this ordinance? I said, Mayor Devers, do you realize that 7 cities have been sued by the ACLU? And Mayor Devers said, Mark, I realize that. And like I said, I need an ordinance. And I said, Mayor Devers, are you saying that you fear God more than the ACLU? And she said, that's exactly what I'm saying. I said, I'll get you an ordinance. That city council was packed. There was only one person that spoke in opposition to the ordinance. It was a Mormon lady that was planning on opening up a women's health care facility in that area. Sent chills down my spine when that one person opposition said, I think it'd be a great thing to have abortion access in West Texas. That city council was not unanimous though. You know, the deacon at a First Baptist church voted against the ordinance. But we did have enough votes to pass the ordinance. And it was passed. The only city to have outlawed abortion during that 3-month period. But the obedience of that one mayor she could have just tucked that away and ignored that, suppressed that calling. I'm glad she didn't, because when Whiteface went forward, their rivals, Morton, Texas, Whiteface is 449 people, Morton's 2,006, not some giant metroplex. But the rivals over in Morton said, well, we should have been first. We should have been the first city in Cochran County in the Cap Rock to pass the ordinance. So I went over there. They gave me second in the area, right? And they didn't pass the ordinance at first because their attorney was I'm not sure about this. But someone on that council said, he was a contractor, he said, I believe we need to pass this, but you know who really needs to pass this? Lubbock. Because some of my contractor friends, they're denying bids to Planned Parenthood. Well, if bids are being denied to Planned Parenthood, then Planned Parenthood's there. Planned Parenthood's working on opening up. So what do? It was a while before Morton passed the ordinance, by the way. 8 months. We started looking in Lubbock for where Planned Parenthood was. They had a dummy corporation, Permian Basin Beta Group. That's what they were going under. We found them, and it was that evidence of them in operation that really got a lot of people there in Lubbock on board, because they realized this is not hypothetical anymore. They're here, and they're going to kill babies. And all the churches, the largest churches in Lubbock, they stood up. From their pulpits, they urged their members. We were having rallies outside of City Hall, 200 plus people every single time. Guys, when Planned Parenthood is asked why they lost Lubbock, 62 to 38%, we won in Lubbock in a citywide election. When Planned Parenthood, who outspent us 3-1, there was money coming from Chicago and everywhere else in America. San Francisco, Austin, that place that's, outside of Texas, but it's like we surround it. But there's so much money coming in to try to defeat that. They outspent us 3-1. The enemy has more, there's a lot of money that the enemy has, a lot of resources, but we won 62-38. And Planned Parenthood says, when they're asked, well, why did you lose? Why did you lose the election? The response of Planned Parenthood was, we just couldn't. They had the churches. Guys, if Christians stand up, we can do incredible things. So it was a church of 30 people that led to a city of Big Spring, 30,000 outlawing abortion in their city. But so don't despise small crowds. Mitchell County, the interest meeting there is 8 people, and we ended up seeing that move forward. Patrick. Hey, Jordan.
I've got to hear him twice and learned something each time, and that's why I said I knew that you wouldn't have problems staying awake during that time. Please make yourself still at home if you're hungry. If you want some snacks or something, there's still plenty there. I know both of the kids just came in, so they might want some snacks. So we welcome you to take advantage of that. 342 men were massacred in Goliad on March 27, 1836. They died for a cause. They died for a purpose. How much are we willing to risk to save a life, even if it's just one life? They died for what we enjoy today. Are we willing to sacrifice all for that? I know Goliad, City of Goliad, City Council meets, I believe, on the 9th and the 23rd of this month. And County Commissioners Court meets on the second and fourth Wednesdays, I believe, something like that. And so we have time to do both. And I would tell you, in working in San Antonio, when we, much like the story that Mark just shared, when Planned Parenthood South Texas, and that's Planned Deathhood, it's not Planned Parenthood, it's Planned Deathhood, when they in San Antonio wanted to build their new ambulatory surgery center in 2014, 2015, and we were searching for how to find them, where they were going to be building. They created a fictitious shell corporation called Del Intero. You could have been Italian to the restaurant, boy, And anyway, we ended up finding out based on the chairman of Planned Parenthood South Texas was the registered agent on the books in his house, which actually was the actual address that he used for filing the corporation. And it's quite insidious on what they're willing to do to cover it up. And we ended up, the San Antonio Family Association, we took on a 3-front battle: administrative, legislative, and judicial. And we had an incredible lawsuit against them. Had a different attorney representing us instead of Jonathan Mitchell at the time, the former city attorney, assistant city attorney in San Antonio. But what happened, that culminated, the best thing we did was we started what's called a Responsible Government Coalition. And we had individuals who were leading organizations throughout the city and the county to come together and start meeting together and do it. And it included lots of pastors. But pastors need support themselves. And they need to be encouraged to stand up to do that, because a lot of pastors we had in the Jewish rabbis would say, well, 50% of my congregation in synagogue is against it, 50% is for it. And they don't want to do anything to mess up the money. And I'm just being very candid with you. So, but they need to be encouraged and urged to do this. And so I would encourage you to call your pastors and do that. But who are 3 to 5 people, pastor, that you would recommend me talking to that can help with this? Because we know you're limited in what you can do. We need your support, we need your prayers, but we know we need to be out in the street rallying people to do that. Our 16-month battle against Planned Parenthood South Texas in the city of San Antonio, when we filed the lawsuit, our city attorneys ended up representing Planned Parenthood in the process. That's a mistake we learned from the hard way. And but we did, it culminated in a major victory. The first ever pro-life piece of legislation passed in the city of San Antonio on December 17, 2015, to make sure that abortion facility could never be built, one like it could never be built in the city of San Antonio again. It is possible. And I can tell you in Goliad, Texas, it's possible. In Victoria, Texas, it's possible. So know that through the work of our Lord, work of the Holy Spirit, people want to be docile to the Holy Spirit. So those 432 men were docile to it. Let us be docile in this day and age. And I will leave you with this scripture passage from First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 19. It is not the size of the army that victory in battle depends, but strength comes from heaven. They come against us in great pride and lawlessness, to destroy us and our wives and our children, and to despoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws. We are a society, a nation of laws. And some people want to upset that. Some people want to violate that. And this is a way for us, if we've ever been in a situation where we said, I wish there was a way I could hold someone accountable for the killing of someone else. Here's your opportunity to do something proactive. That's why the San Antonio Family Association gravitated quickly to help Mark when we learned that he was coming this way. Because we're tired of doing just reactionary. We want to be proactive. We want to do something positive as well. And so I encourage you to do it. San Antonio Family Association is ready to stand with Goliad, and as a native Goliad resident, while born in Victoria at Teachers Hospital, I grew up here until my sophomore year in high school. We moved away, so I stand ready to come back to my hometown and help as well. So San Antonio Family Association, our number is 210-928-SAFA, 210-928-7232. Acronym is SAFA, 210-928-SAFA. And we stand ready to come back on Wednesday for the City Council meeting, or the second, when the County Commissioners meet. We'll be glad to come down. We've been presenting at City Council, Bear County, San Antonio City Council, Bear County Commissioners Court, State Legislature. We're prepared to help in any way and to bring any great assets to help in that presentation. Did you have something to add?
Yeah. A few resources that we have. This is a complete list of the 67 cities in America and the 3 counties that pass ordinances. If you get one walk away from today, make sure you grab this. This is in the back. Also, we have these little fetal models. This is a 12-week fetal model. Guys, growing up, I would go to the Gray County Fair, and my grandfather was Gray County Republican chair, and he was also director of the Right to Life of East Texas. And I would see this on a table along with some other stages. And I remember from a very young age, I would hold this and be thinking, this is a human life. This is what I was once this size. And guys, this is what got me into the pro-life movement. Heritage House 76 puts these out, incredible ministry. But feel free to take one of those, take 2 if you want, give one to a friend, give one to your council member or commissioner. This is a 12-week fetal model. And last thing, I always try to be very approachable. And so if anyone here has any questions in the future, this sheet right here has our website on it at the very bottom, along with the online petition. I pray over every petition that comes in. And so there's some additional comments. If you sign online, I will read that. If you want me to reach out to you, I will. But my phone number is 806-598-1919. It's 806-598-1919. And my email address is markleedixon. It's MarkLeeDixson@gmail.com. But appreciate you guys being here tonight, and thank you all for being here. Remember, there's food in the back. Feel free to grab a plate to go. If you want to have any questions, I'll be around. I'm staying here tonight, so I'm here.
Thank you for bringing
Thank you very
this
much.
up.
Thanks for being here. By the way, I chased a bunch of girls in Victoria while I was living here, so I wanted to help Victoria too.
Patrick, you said there's time to come and talk to the council here, the 9th and the 23rd.
Yeah.
What does that do? One of us arranges that for you to come, an invite, or what, how does it work?
A copy of the resolution that
around the ordinance, but I don't have a copy of the thing, but I can send you.
That's helping you with, and with you.
That's what we wrote in language that you
We'll create a crowd to come down and stand behind the microphone at the city council or county commissioners, but whatever it is, so we can help rally people to come do this. And then we can speak as well. You know, let the people
Yes, thank you. Please come again. We're working on
Well, I see you.